We are Maria
and Nicole. We're two secular homeschooling moms that have
been there, done that. Welcome to the Been There, Done That Homeschool Podcast. Today is episode 5, but what about the prom? Today we're going to discuss homeschool myths and facts. Is your child going to be a weirdo if you homeschool them? Will they be able to go to college? What about dealing with naysayers? Today we're going to discuss all of that and more.
And as usual, we want to stress that our podcast is an inclusive space for your
Definitely.
everyday parents that are looking for education options. We are not here to convince you to homeschool. We want to stress that you need to do what works for your child and for your family.
Every family's different.
Absolutely. And you know your children best. So feel free to take what advice or information you get from here that works for you and chuck the rest. Hey there, Maria. How's it going today?
Hey, Nicole. I'm excited for today's episode.
Oh, me too.
It's especially fitting since just this weekend our kids did the Homeschool Homecoming dance.
They sure did. They had a great time, didn't they?
Well, the mosh pit was definitely my kid's favorite.
I know, and I was one of the chaperones there, I was working in a different room, but when I was on my break, I got to come out and look out over the dance floor, and there was a conga line.
I love that. Oh,
it was so fun.
I didn't know
I was
that.
trying to see our kids down there because they all went together with a group of friends, and I looked and I saw the conga line. I was pretty sure probably your son was leading it, but
oh, I heard there was
tell.
I heard there was some sort of a breakdancing moment. How many kids made it to that dance?
Well, I know they sold 1,000 tickets online ahead of time, and then she was not sure how many they had capped at the door, but I think they had planned on taking at least a couple hundred. So it was wild.
Yeah, it was and the venue. It was at the Flight Museum.
Oh, the venue is incredible. There's airplanes everywhere, hanging around. I mean, it's an actual museum. It's really the perfect homeschool venue too, because they even had a section with chessboards set up for if you were tired of dancing. There was an arcade.
Oh,
and a photo
I did hear
booth.
about. Oh, because the theme was through the decades.
Yeah,
so the 80s area had the arcade games.
It had really cool stuff. But so it was just you would see kids walking around reading things on some of the displays, and it's a really, really, really cool place to do a function.
Okay, well, let's get started on today's episode. But what about the prom?
What about the prom? So this one is super fun. And, because we're total nerdy homeschool moms, we've been listening to a ton of podcasts as research to make our own podcast, because we just can't just jump right into something. We really have to investigate it.
Well, we are doing better because our recordings are sounding better, but also we don't have a thesaurus right in front of us.
Not anymore. We haven't needed it. We dropped all the affirmation list.
We got this.
After my husband made fun of us. But anyway, I've been listening to a ton, and you know what people really love in podcasts? Top 10 lists.
I think we got a top 10, don't we?
We're going to do a top 10 list. I think that's the most fun way to discuss this. So let's just dive right in.
Okay, number 1.
What about the prom? One of the big myths is that homeschooled kids do not get to go to the prom or other big milestone events. And was this a question that you got a lot?
All the time. Everyone asked, but what about the prom? What about homecoming? What about all Valentine's dances, graduation, football games?
Yeah, it's a huge concern for people. And it was kind of funny to me. That was the biggest concern people had. And not even people I know.
And we're talking about for maybe when you're wearing your baby and you have a 3-year-old at your side.
Yeah, this was very young kids that people would be like, oh, you're going to homeschool? But what about the prom? And my little kid would be like, what's the prom? I almost didn't even get this question from people when my kids were actual prom age.
Well, and I think back about my prom, and I went to a huge 5A school, and it was a big deal, but I was into sports, and I was kind of hanging out with people that weren't even at my high school, so it was a way to get out with my friends, and then stop off, get a picture, and then take off to the real party.
Right. A lot of people did that. And, some, I didn't even go to my senior prom. I went to my junior prom. Because I was the prom coordinator, but my senior year, my parents...
Of course you were.
My parents had a trip overseas, and so we went on that instead, and it didn't bother me. My date was in college anyway.
So these big milestone events, well, we are fortunately in a large metroplex that, as far as the homeschool prom, I believe last year's prom brought in 3,000 or 4,000 homeschoolers.
Yeah, they actually had to do it over 2 different nights, because it's such
They
an
had to
enormous
spread it.
crowd.
And it is a big deal. I think tickets range like $125, but that gets you a sit-down formal meal, and it also gets you this incredible thematic night. Every year they do something different. One year they did the Wright Brothers theme, and they actually built a model of the Wright Brothers flyer, which was so cool. It was a great photo prop.
It's amazing. They actually have like 6 different barns full of storage for all of the items that they use every year for this prom. It's over the top. Yeah, the first year that my older kids went, the themes are even like elaborate. Like the theme was something like a night at the Natural History Museum, but there was a famous necklace got stolen. And so like not only is it just the dance with like all these fake museum exhibits, but you can solve this mystery like while you're there.
Right.
There's game rooms, there's all this other stuff going on at the prom. It's not just like a dinner and a dance. It's absolutely wild.
Even in rural areas or tight-knit communities, you can gather together with other homeschoolers and put together your own thing. I remember during COVID, we didn't have this huge prom, or there was a big controversy on if people wanted to wear masks, which was kind of a stress on the kids. So we opted to not go to this huge prom and do our own thing. So we gathered about 10, 12 kids, and the parents put together this great event at one of the community centers, and it was just beautiful. We just piled our resources together, and it was a fantastic event, and the kids just remember it so fondly. So
yeah, that's so super sweet. I love that you guys were able to do that.
Sometimes it feels that parents are projecting some of their own ideas of what prom was to them, like this glorified idea.
Oh, absolutely. I think some things that we might have viewed as milestones were really just special to us because like our regular day-to-day school was kind of daunting, you know?
Yeah.
So they seemed more special than they really were. And like, this was kind of funny, you know, our homeschool group did Valentine's exchange like we did in school. And I remember that being one of my favorite days in school was to, you know, make your Valentine's box and do all the things and give them. And so I was telling my kids, like, we're going to do this. And I got all excited. Like I ended up pretty much making the Valentine's box by myself. Then we got to the park and I was like, do you guys want to do this? And they were like, no, we just want to play.
My kids they love dressing up, but they got a big kick out of creating because that's just kind of the kind of people they are.
Yeah.
They made the 6-foot Valentine rocket
Valentine
box one time. And then there's other moms who I love and adore, and their kids show up with the brown paper sack with maybe their Sharpie with their name. And I'm like, this is just as lovely. And they were so proud of even their brown sack.
It's totally fine. Absolutely. I mean, like that's our whole point of this is that we can still do all of these events. They might not even be as important as we thought that they were, but they still do happen. Like homeschool kids do actually go to the prom and do these other big milestone events.
For sure. All right, so let's get on with our top 10 list. On number 2, homeschool kids are weird and unsocialized.
Well, you know, first of all, there is a big difference between the act of socializing and being socialized. You know, so socializing refers to interacting with others and, you know, talking with people and doing things with people. But socialized means the ability to connect and communicate with many different people,
Right.
Different people of different ages, different situations. But like neither of these things actually require school attendance.
Right. And going back, that was really one of the first things that turned me on to homeschooling. It's when I met a bunch of homeschool teens, and I was just floored at how engaging they were. And they were able to look me in the eye and just have real dialogue. And I was sold from day one about that.
Yes.
And if you met my kids, you would agree probably that they are both really deep thinkers, but they're also class clowns. I'm not sure how my Cameron would do in a class setting like that. I really never wanted them to be the same as everyone else. That was never a goal.
Right. And I mean, if you met my kids, they would also probably be categorized as class clowns. They are actually kind of weird, but you know what? I'm weird, and I went to school, and
there's a lot of
weird is
weird
is hereditary. That's why I always think it's funny when people say that, like, oh, homeschoolers are weird. Like, you didn't go to school with any weird people. Like, I can name like 5 people 30 years later that I would have said total weirdos. But anyway, like, yeah, I'm weird. My husband's weird. We were destined to have weird kids. School doesn't matter. It doesn't play a part in that.
All right. Okay, moving on with our list.
Wait.
Oh, you have something else?
Also, the only time that you're actually together with a group of people your same age, from your same neighborhood, all of that is school. And then later when you're in a nursing home. Oh. Later on when you get a job, when you go to college, you're going to be mixing with all these different ages and races and just all these different demographics. Why do we think that that's the norm? It's actually not.
It's not. Mm-mm. Okay, so we are going to move on to number 3 of our top 10 list. Parents are not qualified to teach their children. What do you have to say about this, Nicole?
I know. Remember back in our intro when I had some big opinions on that? I guess that's what we're kind of ingrained to think, that we're not qualified for this kind of work. But
well, what it really comes down to it is that no one knows your child better than you. They don't.
Well, and I saw this written somewhere and I thought it was really profound. But if your school education didn't prepare you to teach your child math and science, like why on earth would you want them to have that same education? And it's not like we have to be math and science teachers. The curriculum comes in all kinds of different shapes and forms. Some of it is totally scripted. So you do not have to be an upper level science expert to teach upper level science to your children.
Right. I went to public school, and it's hard to say sometimes, but really my education was subpar. And I really wanted more for my kids. So many times we're learning something new. We're talking about the Civil War. And I learned something right alongside my children that I didn't even know.
We're constantly learning as we're doing this. So, I mean, that's kind of the cool thing, too. Like, I actually struggled with math a lot as a kid. And, my parents sent me to tutors. They tried to help me. It was, like, frustrating for everybody involved in it. But somewhere along the line, as I was teaching math to my kids and just going along in the curriculum book with them, like, I think I figured out, like, this key concept that I'd missed that had kind of snowballed the rest of my math career, like, downhill. But I think I picked it up somewhere along that. Now I'm fine with it. So, I mean, we're still learning, and we can learn right alongside them.
Did that come with together? Those math manipulatives, the little bears?
Right. It was all about the linking cubes. Love the linking cubes.
Well, and I never read growing up, and I love reading books alongside my kids. Sometimes those lead to really great discussions because we're immersed in the same story.
And there's also, I talked about curriculum and teaching alongside your kids, but you also don't have to teach every single subject to your child. We actually outsource quite a bit, especially when we get to the high school part. My kids actually attend, well, yours too. They do math and science at a brick and mortar math and science school that's for homeschoolers. We've taken a variety of classes, community college, dual credit. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of other classes with other people elsewhere.
Yeah, there's really no limit. You can piece together anything you want that suits your child or whatever your abilities are. And there's times that you've actually taught my children things.
And you too. Yeah, you too. So. We've combined powers there on a lot of different things and in a lot of groups. And it's important to know that teachers learn to manage classrooms. Like, that's a lot of the training that they get in school. Is not about like teaching a curriculum. It's about managing timelines and transitions and things like that, which when you're now homeschooling, 2 kids, like that is not something that you're actually going to be counting on. There's no time
wasted on that. And, right now, actually just last night, I was with a couple of good friends of mine, and one of them teaches high school world geography. And every day she's coming home right now deflated. She's unfortunately being disrespected by some of her students, and she doesn't have time for some of the kids who actually want to be there and learn. And then she has to subscribe to the 20% failure rate, that if 20% of her students don't pass, she gets disciplined, whether or not they show up for class or not.
Oh my word, that doesn't seem fair.
Oh gosh. So she's looking for a way out. And her wife, she runs a lot of the school cafeterias, and they're just short-staffed. And, this is not a bashing school moment.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm meaning. But I'm just saying that many times there's, the situation isn't always ideal.
There's just a lot of bureaucracy that they have to get around. I think teachers would say that.
Right. And
they do say that. It's kind of shocking how many teachers ended up homeschooling in the last couple years their own children. So it kind of
I have a lot of friends that are public school teachers that they have chosen to homeschool their own children. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I was collecting some testimonials from some good friends who have, walked this road. They've been there, done that too. And if you look at our website, the btdthomeschool.com, you can check out some of the real testimonials from friends, and I call them colleagues, even though, we didn't work in a work environment. We schooled our kids side by side. And so that was their experience.
That's great. So ultimately, you know your child best. There's no one who is more qualified to teach your child than you. So let's move on to number 4.
Okay.
And that is the myth that there are just not that many homeschoolers and your kid is going to be really lonely. Are your kids lonely?
Oh my. Well, first of all, just because you're in school and you're surrounded by other peers all the time doesn't mean that you're not lonely. So that's definitely something that needs saying. There are over 2 million homeschoolers currently in the U.S., although I'm not sure about that count because I'm not registered anywhere. How do they know?
I know. We talked about that in another episode that I always think, Texas has 0 reporting requirements. So, we're not even on a list anywhere. I always think that's kind of funny that, they can't count us.
So when they say 2 million plus, I mean, that plus is significant because there's many states that you don't even
Absolutely.
So.
And homeschoolers don't stay home all day. Well, at least most of it. I'm sure there are some that do, but that actually ended up being kind of the opposite problem for me, is that we had so many extra hours because we get our school done in such a small chunk that it's really easy to sign up for everything. And then you really actually have a problem getting home to do your work.
The world is our classroom. Yes, we're off and running. So yeah, it's limitless for sure.
And not everybody has the same social needs. I have one kid who would love to be with people all day long and do all the things and sign up for that. I have another one that is perfectly social in a group setting, but she absolutely needs her time alone at home, not doing anything to kind of recharge. Everybody's different like that.
Yeah, and even my daughter, she's dorming right now in college with her roommate, and it's a girl that she met when she was a baby at 17 months old, and they were homeschooling back then, but they ended up choosing to go to school due to their family situation. The fact that, socialization is not a problem for homeschoolers.
No, not at all.
I've always taught my children to really value the quality of friendships over the quantity.
Sure.
And to really foster close relationships. And I think that is something that they definitely have done. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, that's worked. Our kids met when they were very young at park days and things. And I always tell people that's the same group of friends has kind of traveled, through time there to be young adults.
All right. Are we moving on to, number 5?
Number 5, homeschooled kids cannot go to college.
Oh, well, seeing that all 3 of ours have graduated and completed their associate's degree before they even finished high school, I would say that and you've graduated one from Colorado
from college
State
himself. So yeah, that's a huge myth. We still see it. I'm surprised that one has not been debunked as the years have gone by, because there's we just know tons and tons and tons of homeschooled kids that do go to college. In fact, research has shown that homeschooled kids tend to perform above average on ACTs and SATs.
Homeschoolers achieve higher academic success in college and ultimately view their college experience more positively than traditional educated children.
That's really cool.
And a friend of ours, her son is homeschooled his whole life, and he did so well in his SATs that he was a national merit, and he got to pick from several full scholarships.
Yep, and in Texas, homeschoolers are seen as synonymous as private schools, so we as homeschoolers set our own degree requirements, we write our transcript, we issue a diploma. And some colleges tend to cater to homeschool students. You can go online for pretty much any college that you would want to apply to, look at their admission information to see what their requirements are, and they often do have a section for homeschoolers. Some colleges don't even have that section because so many homeschoolers apply and go through that admission process every year that they don't even need to treat them any different than a regular student. They're used to working with homeschooled students, not a big deal.
Okay. Number 6, homeschool families are all alike. Definitely not true.
Right. People picture the long hair, long denim skirt, super religious, That's probably one of the big stereotypes of homeschooling, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mentioned the book Educated by Tara Westover, and that's kind of, a lot of people still have this idea in their head that that's what homeschoolers are.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of homeschoolers like that, and that's totally fine. But we are not at all one big homogenous group. Homeschoolers, there's tons of us, and we're all different. We could not be more different. We had said in the last episode that, like, sometimes when you get down to the crux of, like, why you're homeschooling, like, some homeschoolers are homeschooling for completely opposite reasons as others. Like, you can't put us all in one box. We will not fit.
Right. And oftentimes it's not just us moms. There's a lot of dads that are the primary schooler, and sometimes their wives will be the main breadwinner.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of dad friends. There's been a couple days I show up at my hiking group and I'm like, oh, it's all dads and me today. Like we're dad heavy, which is awesome. I love it. And, diversity and inclusivity are values that my family holds in high regard. And when we were researching, we learned that, like, for instance, Black homeschoolers are one of the fastest growing demographics. Mm-hmm. So diversity in the homeschool community is something that's been lacking. So we're really excited to see that changing.
Oh, yeah, I love that. My family's from Cuba, and I embrace my heritage, and we all know that people of color are often left behind, unfortunately, in the education system. So I'm so glad to see families not standing for that anymore and taking charge in their kids' education.
Yeah. And so kind of not necessarily along with that, but as part of this particular topic, I also read a lot of people think that homeschooling is a cover for child abuse. Ugh. And that is like one of the most incorrect and really dangerous of all homeschooling myths. Abusers are abusers first. Homeschoolers abuse their children at far lower rates than families who send their children to traditional school. And it reminds me of sometimes people will talk about like somebody who gives birth in a parking lot because they didn't make it to the hospital on time. And they're like, well, home birthers, blah, blah, blah. That's not a home birther. That's somebody who just didn't get there on time. That's not somebody who planned to have a baby at home with a midwife and like had all the stuff and this and that. So that is in the very same realm as just because like you don't send your kids to school does not make you a homeschooler.
Right. And, these sensationalized stories in the news or the stereotype that they depict in movies, it's hurtful and it's just simply not true. I've met thousands of homeschoolers and I have yet to meet one that did not have their children's best interests at heart.
Right. So anyway, let's move on to number 7, which is that homeschooled kids will not learn as well as they will in a traditional school setting.
Well, I would say that not all children learn best in a traditional school setting. In homeschool, we get to learn concepts one-on-one and spend extra time on concepts that the kids don't really understand very well. And whenever they understand it, we can easily move on. Children learn best when their curiosity is piqued. You know that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie.
Oh, right.
And so that often happens with our homeschool. I remember one time we were discussing World War II, which led to Poland, and my kids were like, where's Poland? So we go to the map and we find Warsaw, which leads to geography, and then we start talking about mapping and longitude and latitude, and which goes to time zones. And then all of a sudden we're talking about the international date line and what's today, what's tomorrow. And so then that leads to time travel.
Oh my gosh.
And we start talking about the speed of light and the theory of relativity. And then all of a sudden my kids are like, I bet I can run faster than you. I bet I can run the speed of light. And so all of a sudden they're trying to slow down time by racing outside. So yeah. Well, okay. The point of this is that oftentimes my kids still can dictate to you the theory of relativity, and they learn really well in that moment.
Yeah. And that's not something that might happen in a traditional school setting. Like somebody would have been like, hey, let's get back to the topic and get that done. But we're really able to cater the learning to the student. And it's great because you're one-on-one or one on a very small amount at the same time. And so that it just makes things a little bit easier. We also don't have transitions. We don't have to, worry about getting people to the next classroom or
waiting in line. And
yeah, we're really, really able to move at our own pace.
Well, one thing that's cool, like especially with math, if, there's 40 problems on a page, but it's kind of tedious work and they already understand the concept, why continue to, if they have the concept at 10 problems, that's kind of my idea. Not every homeschooler would agree with that.
Yeah. And I mean, some kids need more review than others, but no, absolutely. That's the way that you're able to gauge it and you're able to pace yourself and move at the pace that they pace. Pace.
7 was rough. Okay.
Yes.
Moving on to number 8. Homeschooled kids don't get to participate in extracurricular activities.
Right. So we were talking earlier about like milestone events like graduation and the prom and things like that. But this particular category, we're speaking specifically about things like band or orchestra, sports, things like that. That's a huge deal to a lot of parents that, well, maybe my kid's not going to be able to do that if we homeschool. For one, several states do allow you to do stuff with schools. When we lived in Florida, the school in my area did allow homeschool kids to participate in band. I think you could come in for science labs and you could participate with art. And now that varied from district to district, and sometimes it depended on the principal of the school. But so the crux is that some states do allow this, but also there's plenty of opportunities available elsewhere. In the community. We live in a big metroplex, so I know this isn't true for all areas, but you can pretty much find like every kind of homeschool sport or club, a homeschool version of that in our area. And we're here in Texas. Texas actually passed this is called the UIL Equal Access Bill. You may have heard it referred to in the news as the Tim Tebow Bill, which would give homeschoolers access to any university interscholastic league, UIL activities, which is...
Yeah, not a lot of homeschoolers are fans. I'm not a huge fan of that bill. And
it was a very controversial bill for like everybody. I mean, schools didn't want it either.
Well, one thing that happens whenever they do let the children into the school system to participate in these extracurricular activities, oftentimes it comes with strings attached about testing and them oversight of your curriculum. And I really enjoy the freedom to do what I want and teach my children what I want them to learn. So I'm not a fan of that. And really all the extracurricular that we've ever needed, we've been able to meet. Let's see, what have your kids done over the years? Well, your children have competed in world competition in Ireland for their Irish dancing.
Yeah. We kind of have niche. We're kind of weird with our activities. But we've also done like Model United Nations. My daughter's at a youth and government meeting while we record right now. We've done Future City, which is a big public school engineering.
My son's at theater performance practice right now. So
yeah, there's plenty of things that they can do. Also, one of the when I was researching the bill that we talked about, the Tim Tebow bill, was something I really didn't know about it was that part of the opposition was that we have some like seriously awesome established homeschool sports leagues that have like fought for the years, through the years for their status and their program recognition by recruiters. And so they were opposed to this bill because they didn't want to lose these awesome homeschool teams, which I didn't know that. I knew that you could find everything. I didn't know that we had these like elite programs out there.
I looked into that at one point when my son was interested in baseball and realized quickly that, when you're starting a 12-year-old at baseball, they're not going to be quite at that competition level.
Oh, right. I've told you my baseball story when my son decided to try it at 10, but like everybody had 7 years of travel team experience. Like it was nuts. So I thought 10 was like a normal age.
Oh my gosh, the competition is quite fierce right now.
Yeah, we could do a whole other episode on sports for children, but let's move on to number 9.
Number 9,
which is that homeschool students won't be prepared for life.
Absolutely false. I mean, there's always a chance that a public school child will not be prepared for life. And I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule, but I would argue that public school did not prepare me for life. I didn't even know how to balance my checkbook whenever I graduated high school.
Right. There's all kinds of
silly things like that, yeah.
I know. One of our friends' kids had a roommate that didn't know how to do laundry.
Are you talking about Jen?
Oh no.
Oh, that's it. Okay, so there's more than one friend that we know that didn't know how to do laundry.
Yeah. And, the truth of the matter is there's a high percentage of homeschoolers that graduate college. There's many go on to become entrepreneurs or business owners. Like, I think I've read like a statistic in the 80s. I couldn't find it when I was researching, but I remember it's like a ridiculously high amount that like own their own businesses and things.
Right.
And
yeah, many homeschoolers are taught to be critical thinkers and not just to learn facts. And they do tend to think outside the box, and they're innovative, and they often succeed as entrepreneurs.
Yep. And so again, this is one of those things where, homeschool students won't be prepared for life. Well, we knew people in school that were not prepared for life. So that's going to be individual. It's really a myth. It's not going to happen.
Okay. Moving on to number 10. Homeschooling is expensive. Well,
it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I'm going at this solo, and I'm making it work. I've always
people who know you know that you're one of the craftiest like budget people ever. I don't know.
Well, pre-COVID, I think I had my grocery bill down to $150 a month.
Oh yeah, like nuts. Like you are able to like squeeze like $10 out of a penny. I don't know how.
Inflation's caught up with me a little bit, but yeah, I'm still. Okay, so anyway, homeschooling. So there's plenty of free resources that are available. The library, we lived at the library for many years. Everything from obviously the books and the checkouts and the movies and such, but there's a lot of really great resources. There was a preschool story time that we loved to go as a big special twice a week event that we did. They have special events, magicians, and they'll bring critters and animals from the zoo in. And then there's an annual Halloween puppet show that is our favorite, and we love it so much. And even I was talking to my 15-year-old the other day. I'm like, should we go to the puppet show this year? And he goes, sure. And I'm thinking, oh, we might have to borrow somebody's little kid because we might
right, so we're not like creepy. We also were able to check out these like really cool bins from the library. I can't remember if that was here, but I'm sure they have something like that here too. But like I have checked out like a themed bin, like a nature bin, and then took it home, and it was full of fossils and bones and feathers and like all kinds of things that we were able to do in a co-op class. But there's like tons and tons of those things, and they're all free. All you need is a library card. And even if you are not in a large area, we are lucky to have a fantastic library system, but we also can tap into neighboring library systems, and a lot of people in rural communities can do that as well.
Right.
Do interlibrary loan, and so talk to your librarian if you think that's something that you need that you're not maximizing use of.
Definitely been our number one resource over the years. Dual credit. Often dual credit is free or at a discounted rate for high school students that are ready for that type of academic rigor.
And dual credit is getting credit in high school and in college at the same time. So when we use that term, you also might hear dual enrollment, dual credit. Sometimes these are used interchangeably. I think they actually do have two different definitions, but our particular college in this area calls it dual credit, so that's what we call it too. But it's basically taking a class that's going to satisfy the requirements for both.
Right. And one thing I call it a twofer, because you can take a 1 semester class in these college classes, and it counts for an entire year of high schools. And there's another time saver right there. That's one of the reasons that all 3 of our graduates were able to finish their associates in high school. So
it's great. Another way to save costs is that sometimes a group of families will pool together resources and expertise into what we call a co-op or a cooperative learning environment. And you might have like a small fee to cover like a facility rental. Like we did this in a church with a co-op that you and I were both involved in years ago. And the parents would take turns teaching different classes. Other parents would, like everybody's involved. Like all the parents have duties. Like,
you remember that nature study we did? And we faked out the kids because we hid gummy worms in the woods, and then we went to go eat them, and they thought we were eating real worms.
I mean, it helped that they'd been sitting out there for like a period, and they were kind of warm. So when I went to eat the worm, I like kind of gagged a little. I wasn't expecting it to be warm. I had to send out like an apology after each one of these classes because we did so much funny stuff. But you know what? I bet they remember.
They do.
If they're ever lost in the woods, they're going to eat a grub.
Worms.
Yep, we had a good time.
Oh my gosh.
But so not only is that cost effective though, but like some really great relationships formed with the other families just makes, doing a co-op is kind of an invaluable experience.
Definitely memorable. One other way that we saved a ton of money is spending a lot of time at thrift stores when the kids were little. You'd be surprised. A lot of young kids, they don't care if they have brand new items, and they outgrow things and interests so fast. Often we would just pick up old electronics for $1 or $2, and we'd take them home, and the kids would go to town and take them apart and learn all about the inner mechanics of it. I guess that's one reason my oldest is studying engineering in college.
Oh, for sure. So that was our top 10 list. Those were a lot of myths that we just busted right through. So now you know.
with the worms.
About the worms. You're all prepared. You will not starve in the woods. So now that you know all these things are false, we can talk about how do you deal with naysayers?
Well, I would say that COVID has made this easier for homeschoolers. Since COVID, there's a lot more acceptance with families choosing unconventional paths to education. First, I really wanted to mention that it's so important to surround yourself with support, not only for homeschooling, but whatever you choose for your family. Raising a family is a lot of work, and the last thing you need is additional stress with people telling you you're doing it wrong or you should be doing a different thing. It's too much. So,
yeah. And sometimes it's family and sometimes it's strangers. We talked earlier about how sometimes like strangers would come up to us in the store or, you know, at some public place. And when they find out you homeschool, sometimes they like start asking your kids all these questions quizzing them.
Well, the first question is always what grade they're in, which my kids still don't know what grade they're in.
That's kind of a, like, sometimes they'll, like, the kids get uncomfortable and they look at me. And then the stranger is like, God, they don't even know what grade they're in. But really, it's because we didn't really do grades until like high school. So I was like, well, what grade do you have to be to sign up for that certain level of scouting? And they were like 6, and so I was like, all right, you're 6th grade. But yeah, so we personally don't really do grades till high school. So that's a loaded question. But sometimes too, they'll start quizzing them on math and, you know, asking them different things. And so sometimes we just like let the kids respond.
Yeah, I did that often. Sometimes they're, you know, they'll get that eyebrow raise and, you know, that look. But I just turned around and I was like, oh, honey, she's asking you a question. And they're always nice to the kids. I just started to let that happen. And oftentimes it's a question about socialization. I said the S word. They'll ask,
it's a myth. We already learned.
Do you have any friends? Do you talk to anybody? And I'm thinking, lady, you just had a 10-minute conversation, a really good conversation with my child. They're socialized. They just socialized with you.
Right. You just did it. You answered your own question. So are you socialized?
No, clearly not.
So, yeah, we try to respond with kindness. Usually people are saying something because they care about you and your children or they're concerned. So it's definitely easy dealing with acquaintances because you can also choose to not be around them. In fact, I have like a canned answer when people write on homeschool message boards like, what do I do about all these people who are saying this, this, and this? And I was like, well, spend less time with unsupportive people.
The truth is there's always going to be someone who doesn't agree with your life choices, and you just can't live to please others. Family and close friends can get a little trickier. Some of the phrases that I love, this is what works for us, or I'm thankful we can get to all choose what's best for our own families. And then, unfortunately, sometimes they're a little pushier. And I always like to go with the sandwich approach. You know, you put the meat of it between two little pieces of bread that are a little more positive, like, I hear you and appreciate your feedback, positive validation. Mm-hmm. This is what we've decided to do, making your point, and finish it with your sandwich is, I know you are concerned, but I've got this. Finish it off. Because otherwise, some family won't relent. I think it was probably 3 years ago, my father said to me, sorry, Dad, and he says to me, when are you going to put your kids in real school? At this time, my oldest was almost finished with her associate's degree in high school. So I'm not really sure how to answer that.
You were committed by then.
I was committed. I love you, Daddy.
Sometimes that happens. I would say, oh, that's a great point. I will give that the consideration it deserves. And other times, if people really aren't like letting it go, I don't know if you've heard, this was from a very popular message board years ago, was the bean dip method, where you do a little change of subject. Like, oh, have you tried the bean dip here at this family event? Would you like to try it? So the bean dip method just closes down the conversation, because sometimes if you continue to try and justify your choices to people, then they think you're having a discussion. They think that they actually do get a vote on this or an opinion on it, when they don't. Right. So you're better off, shutting down completely with some people.
Right. And if they still won't relent, and sometimes you just have to completely shut them down, unfortunately, you might have to say something like, I can see we don't see eye to eye on this subject, so I feel it's best that we just don't discuss it.
Yeah, and that's just sometimes what you have to do. I was really lucky that, I'm sure that my parents and my in-laws probably thought that we were a little bit crazy when we were going to do this, but I think I also said, I also had done all this other crazy natural birthing, cloth diapering, breastfeeding stuff, so maybe they weren't so surprised when I was like, I was going to homeschool. They were like, oh, well, of course you're going to. But I often told people, wait, the proof is in the pudding. My parents and in-laws came to all these parties that we had with our kids and all their homeschool friends, and they would always just rave about how well behaved and how social and how awesome these groups of kids were after they saw them, and then of course my own kids, as they got older and they saw that they were just normal, well-adjusted, great kids. Homeschooling starts selling itself.
Okay, great. That's going to wrap up our episode today. Tune in next week for episode 6, What Should Your Preschooler Know? See you next episode.
Cheers!
Be sure to check us out on our website at btdthomeschool.com, as in been there, done that, btdthomeschool.com. You can join our mailing list and get news and updates on future podcasts, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at the BTDT Been There, Done That Homeschool Podcast.